Welcome to another episode of Price Targets with your host Bitcoin Jack. Welcome back. We'll jump in, but there's this game, so I hope you're enjoying watching that game between France and Spain. I'm gonna be a little bit distracted. Luckily, it's halftime, so uh, we probably should go through everything that we have like relatively quickly, and then the last half can be half half attention. Today, I want to talk about my thesis that from here on out, oil is basically going to tell us the news. It's been doing that before, but now it's getting really clear. Um, it hit this level from before the conflict, and then suddenly the conflict starts to reappear. And I really want to jump into that CT is back because we're seeing each other on Twitter. The algo is actually, you know, serving you the people you follow again. So I don't know, maybe that's gonna be an interesting vibe change. I'm definitely sensing people to be much happier, and I don't know, it's kind of cool. If you're hearing some kind of like background noise, that's because I'm parked at at the ocean, uh, like a little bit of a river inlet behind me, and I got the doors open because it's crazy fucking hot and the AC is not still going, still has to go for servicing. BTC targeting 72K, I think. We'll talk about that. ETH is, I think, is breaking out, and maybe we should look at the rate hike story again, especially after the CPI today. So let's see. Any issues on the stream end? Because I feel like it's super laggy on the feedback feed that I'm having, um, even though it's on low latency. Just let me know in the chat if everything is okay. Let's just dive in. So we're just back to seeing people that we're actually following, so that's kind of cool. And all these people haven't replied to any of my tweets in a super long time, simply because they were not seeing them. That's kind of crazy. I don't know if this is going to change, if we're going to be, if CT manages to group together again and kind of make a push outwards to get some, good vibes going again, and maybe attract some people into actually buying again. I would think it might, but I don't really, this is zero edge for me. But I could imagine this could change a little bit of the group feel, which generally should be positive. Yeah, and then the other thing that I want to talk about is I talked with KuCoin. They're sponsoring this show, and I wanted to change up the entire reward structure. So essentially, what I wanted is that everyone who signs up basically super easily can get to VIP for fees, which I think is a pretty good incentive to sign up. It's a pretty nice step up straight away, and all you have to do is basically complete KYC, deposit $10, and you get $200 position airdrop. And then if you do your first trade, you get another 300, and then the first 10 users each day get the VIP benefit voucher, which if you use it, automatically bumps you to VIP 4. So that's, I think, the biggest change we made there. And then you get a bunch of deposit rewards on anything that you subsequently deposit if you do a bit of volume. So if you deposit 100 and do then 1,000 in volume, you get 100 USDT airdrop as a position. So essentially, you make money on that position. You choose whether you go long or short on something, and then you earn that. You earn on that trade. So in total, I think you can get like something like 10K. So I hope that's a much better incentive structure and a much better deal. And we're gonna try and collect the feedback from this event for this month, and maybe see if we can even improve that. So that's that thing. Then really quickly, the Fed, um, we got a pretty good CPI. So what we're looking at here is essentially a month ago, the rate hike expectations for one hike were a lot higher, and we're seeing that, um, you know, we're seeing that we're pretty sure that we're gonna get this hike, but like more, we're gonna get less hikes essentially. Um, and the chances of no hikes is also increasing again. So maybe we get into this position in 1 or 2 months if oil doesn't really roar past this 80 level that we identified last week. We're gonna look at that chart in a bit, um, where these bars are gonna shift back to where we are now. So basically flat. Basically, the theory that I shared 2 weeks ago, where I said probably we're going to see, an easing of the of hawkish expectations, and that's going to be used by Kevin Warsh to kind of support the market whenever that time comes, right? So I'm just quickly going to jump back to intro just to see. Yeah, all right. We're just going to jump into charts. I guess that's the best thing that we can do right here. First of all, ETH is showing the way, hopefully. So I've been quite, I think I've been quite on point with most assets except Bitcoin, right? For the last 6 months, maybe more. ETH is doing this thing where it's putting in a higher low here. I think that's going to be the pivot in the general market. And hopefully that's going to push Bitcoin away. So last week we spoke about Bitcoin having this 64K-ish daily resistance here at like 64.3. And I really want to see that gained. It's been pushing at it for a few times, but as long as that is a resistance, it's resistance. But after today, the CPI came in much softer than expected. So that gave us a push. And then I think the whole CT thing made people also become a bit more bullish. So if we manage to have that daily close above here and then start pushing, it's above it slightly, then I do think it's going to open up to that 72K area. So we had that trade from 2 weeks ago where we basically said if the price cannot go lower, if the wholesaler story is kind of like overblown, which was the claim that, the theory that we had, and then we had all these sweeps subsequently with the price not going lower, that's kind of where price has to reverse to squeeze them. Now, this resistance has been tested quite a few times. If it doesn't see follow through to the downside and it's not seeing that, then the very simple explanation is that it's going to go to the upside. So we have one trade from 60.3 to 64, and then the other trade was to the 72, maybe 74 area. I think that's still in play. And we're hopefully watching that kind of turn out to the upside. Yeah, so Jingo, that was indeed, I think, Nikita saying they changed a little thing, and then it feels like we're back to the algorithm from, before Elon took over. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, we're rolling out a small tweak to boost visibility of your posts to your mutuals. Now, essentially, my entire feed now is my mutuals. Like all these people are actually I actually follow. This feels like we're back to 2018, 2017, 2020. Like it's kind of cool. Like everyone here is someone I follow. So it's funny because it's fucking funny because this dude realized that we're here to actually read the shit of people that we follow. And now he's going to claim that he's a genius, which is ironic. Anyway, so the Bitcoin story remains the same. And if you zoom out on a higher level, that kind of gives us, well, first of all, retest this trend line, but probably the next one as well. So we're starting, if we break 64 and claim it, I think we're starting to see the formation of a Chuva fork. And that's, on the really high time frame level, wouldn't surprise. You mean the Chuva fork usually is like the reversal pattern, and then we have this giant level here where it's supposed to happen. So it just makes a lot of sense. I think the whole Sailor thing finally is starting to die down. There's a bunch of people on CT still kind of like saying that he's an idiot and, well, maybe he went a bit too deep and he's taking a little bit of a haircut right now because he's essentially paying 11.5% now to shore up on cash. And then once that market stabilizes, he's going to start buying back higher. So he's not even actually like, deploying at the lows. He's selling at the lows, which is kind of retarded, but his end goal is to become a Bitcoin bank. So his end goal is to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible. And the best way to do that is now to restore kind of like the stability and stretch and mark strategy. It's going to cost him, a few billion, which is nothing compared to the whole assets they have under management. But here's the bigger story, I think, for market sentiment. We've been talking about this falling wedge kind of structure. We've spoke about the possibility of this continuing to the downside for, instead of an A, B, C, D, E kind of falling wedge, becoming F, G, and then potentially one more. With this breakout that we're currently seeing, I think we can logically say that probability is much lower now. So we're seeing the completion of this pattern. And the completion of this pattern is very simple. We have this giant impulse, this, and then a consolidation pattern. Even if it's like a quote unquote bear market, larger correction from this entire move, that still gives us an impulsive move here, consolidation here, and then it gives us at least one move up. And I would be very much surprised if it doesn't, at least give a similar kind of return as the first move. So that gives us the one Fibonacci extension here. And then from another perspective, if you look at so just a horizontal level. I'm just going to mark this a bit bolder and maybe a different color like that. It's super clean. Like, sure, if this comes down from here, that looks super bad, but we don't have the evidence that's going to happen right now. We had this consolidation, we had this retest, then we had the breakout, and we're actually seeing some momentum that's quite good relatively to what it has been during this entire consolidation. So this structure looks, in my opinion, as the foundation of the reversal. And then it's going to do either the 0.618, or if it's more bullish, it's going to do the 1 extension. So either way, that's a good solid, let's see. That's a good solid 40% right there. So yeah, I mean, this is not gonna happen overnight. This is gonna take time, um, but it can go quite fast. Like, you know, probably a big pump, 20%, and then some consolidation, and then it just keeps on ripping. Um, and much likely goes higher than we expect at this point. And then on the USDT pair, obviously I'm not the biggest fan of ETH or in any kind of way, but it's a general risk appetite thing right now, just to see whether it can actually outperform or not. And if it can, we're gonna see that in a bunch of other alts as well. Um, and hopefully, logically, that would imply that the general market is turning risk on. So for on the USDT pair, what we're seeing is we're basically almost back to where the last big sell-off that we had started to occur, right? And it's making new highs. So a low, a high, higher low, testing that previous high, and then it's breaking higher. So to me, that, you know, claiming this level again and actually holding it this time instead of going in it, getting rejected again, and retesting the lows, that says we're back in business. And then this is the logical next level, but we're back in range, so that implies that we should be able to go to the range highs at like 2400. If we measure that, that's only like 25, right? So what I said here about a 20% move from here, that's probably, you know, similar to the move that we had here. That's how it's going to start out, and it's going to do some consolidation, and then it's going to start ripping much faster. So things are not going to move super fast. Probably we end up somewhere around the 0.38 or maybe the 0.5, and then do kind of a consolidation. So maybe something like this and then higher would be a nice inverse head and shoulders, blah, blah, blah. And then the beauty, this is kind of like a really fun chart. Zcash, it's kind of like in this position where it's trying to claim like the weekly. So let's say this weekly here is the crucial weekly with this one here, and then it was tested here, but it's claiming it again. This basically tells me that it wants to go higher. It doesn't have to go higher straight away, but it tells me that it wants to go higher eventually. So maybe it's going to come back down for a little bit, but it's definitely saying, okay, well, we have this weekly level here at 660, and it's trying to go there. So I would probably be interested if you zoom out on this, for example, on the weekly. If we get a rejection on Zcash, what's up, Johnny? If we get a rejection on Zcash from this basic level, then this entire, there's a bunch of levels below that are interesting, right? But this entire region is interesting. We have a weekly level here, we have a weekly level here, and then we have the weekly level of these 2 wicks. So I would say anywhere, anywhere back to 72 is a no-brainer buy. And in my opinion, and I've explained it before, we had this beautiful chart. I don't have it on this machine, but we had this beautiful chart where we basically said, well, this is starting to look like Bitcoin. I can probably reproduce it very quickly. Let me just do it very quickly. So So this is super cool, but essentially you have the high here, then you have the full kind of, you know, bear market. Then it makes a bottom. Then you have the echo rally, the echo bubble. And then you have some kind of stupid crash event, which was the FUD on Zcash, and on Bitcoin it was COVID. And then it recovers. It goes a bit like sideways. It's, you know, it goes up, it goes sideways, it does like a breakout retest. So something like this or something like this, and then bam. I think that's literally what Zcash is doing. So that's, I don't know. Like, this thing should be going to, I don't know, like, if you would be able to measure that on Bitcoin, I don't know. I don't know if that's a good idea, but you could probably. Like, this is zero edge. This is no edge, but you could probably measure it out something like this if you want to believe that it's following the fractal. So essentially you take the bottom here and then you measure, what's that? 744. Something like that. So that would imply like 2400, and then maybe a little bit higher towards 3000. So it's kind of like the arrow we put up here. So yeah, I wouldn't sleep on Zcash. Like, it's not a massive gain from where we're at. Maybe it's gonna be much more than that by that time, but it's a good 5x. So I would definitely not cry about that, because Bitcoin hasn't been that, crypto hasn't been that attractive as a whole, right? I think there's a lot of money to be made next cycle on new protocols that will come around that will kind of pinch in on the whole AI thing and become actually useful to AI. And perhaps privacy coins are part of that. So I don't want to talk about Monero. I still hold a bag. It's not really moving right against Bitcoin. Yeah, it's kind of the same story as last week. We have this resistance right here. Once that clears, we get 355, and then we get 420, and then we should be able to get 500, but it's not really doing it. So I'm just holding and waiting for that to happen. And probably it's gonna be like super stupid and have like a giant wick, because the liquidity is quite thin on it, and you can't really get it you can't really get it everywhere. You can get it on KuCoin, you can get it on Finex, a bunch of other places, but most exchanges are still kind of like rejecting it. So maybe that's also going to turn around. Maybe there's going to be a pivot in the narrative where we're going to see XMR getting listed again on major exchanges. Maybe something in the US is going to change in that regard. But Zcash seems to be the main narrative still in terms of America. So where would I re-enter Zcash? Ideally, we get a retrace. If we don't get a retrace, it becomes maybe a little bit more simple. But I would say the weekly levels have been working quite nicely, right? You can see that here. So if we would have to draw at a weekly level, that's like 473. And we've been there, right? Like during the retest here. So I don't know if that's gonna get retested, but I would love to get in around like 470, maybe 460, somewhere around this consolidation here. And then the Zcash BTC pair it's just this entire range. I would be interested in it. Um, but it's holding up for now. So essentially, I think we, I think I might be fucked, right? If we, if price can actually manage to stay above this weekly level and also, you know, close above like 430 on the weekly, that that would be an entry on its own. That's just the range. This would be the range. So either it's trading this range or that range. It's either or. I don't want to be short on it. So if I get 460, 470, I will take it. If we get the weekly close above here, I'm probably have to have to be long. And then the question is, where do you put your stop? So generally, I'm not a real big fan of putting the stop below the nearest low, which would be yesterday's low. So then it has to be the next one. So it's either like at 450 or below 440. If we claim the weekly level here. So essentially you either have, something like this, and then your stop goes around here or here, or price comes down to the 470 area. And then I would probably go very wide with it there, because this kind of feels close. And then anywhere between here, I'm not really sure of it. So I would have to put it down here. And then it becomes a bit of a weird trade. I mean, it's still almost 2R, but I generally prefer a little bit more. That would generally, for me, be what I try to do. I think my exit was right here, like 490. But I think there's no rush on Zcash. That's the whole point I was trying to make with that Bitcoin fractal thing. Even if it comes like up here in this kind of range, there's going to be an opportunity to get long for their larger move. And that feels much more like a safe bet, quote unquote, than kind of predicting how this consolidation is going to work out, right? There might be some fuckery going around, but having like a bigger position and trying to nail that larger move, and then maybe using some wider stops, that would be what I would probably prefer at this point. But I want to talk about hype, because hype is interesting. We talked about hype last week, and the week before and the week before that, but we talked about the entry that I wanted to get, because I missed the re-entry on basically the giga entry when we got down to like 52, because I wanted to have these levels at 51 to 50, and that got front run. And then I figured, okay, well, this is going to consolidate a little longer. I'm not going to try and fuck around figuring out exactly where the consolidation is going to play out. So last week, what I wanted to see is coming through this trend line, right? Basically trapping everyone who sees the trend line gets broken. And then we're just, going to continue up from there. So that's happened. I'm just going to remove these levels for a bit. What I think now is important is that you figure out where to put the stop, right? So essentially, in my opinion, you can enter at spot price. Maybe you can wait for these lows, but I just want to have exposure, because I think that if the general market is going to turn back bullish, hyper liquid is going to be an asset where things are gonna happen. Um, so you want to have an entry right here. You could wait for this trend line to reclaim, but it's just gonna negate your profits, I think. Like I probably would take the risk here instead of higher. Then 100 is the target, right? So you could put your stop here. It's close, like, but there's one, there's two, there's three. There's three kind of lows inside of that. So the third one, generally as a rule, doesn't have a very high probability of being ran, even if we're trying to like kind of run the stops, as so to say. So I posted this one on Twitter. That's a pretty fucking neat trade. That's a pretty fucking neat trade. Like 5R. What's up, Hamdi? I don't know. Every time I open this chart, Solana, I get the X. Maybe it's just the whole Sam Bankman-Fried story or whatever, but still, it's kind of looking like it's trying to do the thing where it's gonna rally. It's a similar structure as Bitcoin. It swept the lows. It's accepting back in range. It has this like little rejection. I would say if it doesn't have like if it reclaims the level here, that's an easy level, and it makes sense that it's gonna outperform ETH. It's higher beta than ETH. It bled harder than ETH, so it should perform better on to the upside. So yeah, I would say I don't have this position, but last week I was hesitant to actually make a call on it. But now we've had another week and it came down. It's retesting the level. That's not a bad trade. That's a good trade, like 3R. They don't come around that often. Yeah. Fuck, I'm excited about this because we spoke about the order block right here. It moved. The order block was formed on this inefficiency that was left behind between this high and this low. And it retested the order block and now it's pushing, right? And the other thing that we spoke about is how this is kind of like a wedge structure where the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or the A, B, C, D, E is a bit funky where the B wave moves higher, so this one is truncated. I will look at Mike's strategy, miss. Probably the same story as last week. It hasn't done any of the conditions that we spoke about last week. So we'll talk about it for sure. But it's at the trend line, right? So if this manages to move above it, it's probably, as we said last week, it's going to retest the 2.18, probably maybe do a little bit more of a retrace, but then it should really be able to do the full continuation pattern. So first stop then becomes 280, like 260 to 280. Do a little bit of more funkiness, but in general, that should be, it's setting up for the fifth wave here. That's looks like such a good chart. Like honestly, a really good chart. Like If this can move to 4.7, I'd be surprised very much. That's 35 minutes. All right. Fuck, Spain scored, huh? I'm watching the match on the side. So in MicroStrategy, same setup as last week. We're just waiting for it to happen. But strategy has this setup where I believe it should be able to go back to almost 200, given that it reclaims the 105 level. So that was resistance on the 6th of July-ish. Then came back down. It retested the level here. You can enter here if you want. It gives a bit more risk because it hasn't really given the confirmation. But I think it will move back to there. And the stop, either way, the stop goes below here. The question is like, how far away do you put it? I would put it below the low, like quite close to it easily, if you actually had the reclaim and the retest and then the continuation, right? But that just gives you a bit of a different return. I'm waiting for this to happen, if that makes sense. And then stretch, like it's back to, it's basically back to saying to people saying, well, we want to own stretch, but we want to get like 13 point something % yield, which is what they're getting at Strive. So if you buy it at this price and it stays at this price, your return is like 13 point something. And that's where you're getting for Strive. So essentially they're saying, okay, well, we believe you. We believe that you are as liquid as Strive. So the market is basically saying, well, there is no problem with Stretch. We believe that you're going to pay us the 11.5% yield, but Strive is paying us 13 or 13.5. So we want to have the same, or else we're going to buy Strive. That's essentially this $88 pricing. So in my opinion, this was the liquidation part where a bunch of people, whoa, there's a buy coming. Can you hear it? Huh, that's funny. The price being back at 88 is basically the market saying, okay, yeah, fine, we're just arbitraging this the difference with Strive, because Strive came out and said like, hey, we're gonna pay you like 13 or 13.5, and yeah, we want to have the same, so we're gonna either sell our stretch and buy Strive, or we're gonna buy it at $88. Then, and I haven't talked about this the entire stream, but it was essentially the title. Last week we spoke about oil having a bounce back to the low 80s. I think I started the stream with that, or I made the tweet after and we spoke about it during the stream. I don't remember exactly. Now price is back to 80, low 80s, went to 81. Maybe it goes a bit higher. Maybe it does retest like this trend line. But the thesis is that, well, the market is fucking manipulated, right? Like, it's no coincidence that price comes back down to a certain level where you would expect a technical reaction, and then the whole conflict reappears and reignites, and prices are back to $80. My humble opinion is that we're gonna get good news again once price comes into these like low to mid 80s, and then it's gonna come track back down. I don't think it's gonna get reclaimed. I don't think it's gonna go back to the highs we had. I think the conflict is mostly solved, but it isn't yet. But it is, right? It's just bullshit to distract us. Um, the other thing that I spoke about is that, they need to be buying back their petroleum reserves. And so they need a reason for higher prices because they're essentially buying a lot of oil back right now. Yes, same story as last week. We're still targeting 80 to 100. I don't think there's gonna be any kind of really big downside here. Just expecting sideways until a breakout, and then we're just gonna chug along to 8,200. If it's gonna, I don't know if it's gonna be this slow or it is gonna, happen faster, and then become this kind of like rounded top where it just, you know, it does this and then it goes here and then it does the long rounded top, or that we have a boring summer and then we have like a bullish September into a blow off October and then have the sell off. But I think the sell off is coming. And that ties into SpaceX because we talked about SpaceX and we said, well, like it's probably going to go below the IPO price, do like a little round thingy, and then start moving up again. I think August has a bunch of unlocks and the supply is going to go higher. So uh, people are essentially trying to lock their prices in right now. And then once those unlocks happen, people are going to actually close their shorts. So any unexperienced trader, once August comes, is going to say, well, uh, it's bearish that we get 20% of the supply hitting the market. But that's a bunch of shorts that are going to close because they've actually, then they actually have access to the real supply. So that's interesting. Venice, this one is tricky. That initial reaction here was quite nice. My stop is not far below 10, so kind of it's kind of fucked in a way that it's not moving. I never really like these trades that do this kind of thing. It gives me the icks, and I do believe it. A lot of times it's reason for me to cut, but if my thesis is correct that SpaceX is doing this bottoming thing here, like a rounded thing, and yeah, that's kind of the point where things are going to get bullish again on AI. And I think this chart, Venice, is your AI appetite one because there's no lockups here. There's been a bit of FUD because Eric decided to do like this dual token, dual equity thing, which we've proven in the past that it doesn't work. Maybe Eric can make it work. We'll see. And I think then we're at the end of it. Like, we can talk about TAI, but there's not really anything happening on TAI right now. Either I want to have the breakout above 260 or, either you get a position right now, but I'm not sure. This could definitely sweep the low here. Maybe it wants to sweep the low here. That's quite far away, but it's definitely possible. Maybe it wants to maybe it wants to sweep the low at 160. It's kind of in nobody's land right now. So I want to have like some kind of reassurance that something is happening. Some kind of transformation is happening. So just gonna leave that one alone. And then for track, same story. I want to see 30 broken and claimed, and then some kind of, that gives me reason to think that it could actually develop a little bit of a trend, to retest the old trend line, which then makes it super bullish and like a giant accumulation area. But until then, I would stay away from it. And then, yeah, I think the whole 64K here is super important. Uh, if we can claim it, 72, and then, then it's game on. I hope that made sense. And yeah, I would say, guys, really check out the thing that KuCoin set up for us here, because VIP4 is going to give you some nice discounts, and then you get a bunch of airdrops on anything that you deposit. So it's a nice subsidy to your trading. Obviously, it's just a way to get you into the platform, and that's kind of how these sponsorships work. But I think there's some genuine value there. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. So check out the link in the description, and just let me know if you have any feedback, or you need more things to actually consider signing up. Hope that made sense, and I'll catch you guys next week.